British Spy Stories. Season 3. Official Denial. Episode 14. Maxime gets off at Notting Hill Gate tube station and heads east through the crowds of shoppers and tourists. Eventually he moves beyond the bustle of the shops and cafes that surround the road junction, and he walks on to the embassy. He turns in through the gateway and takes the stairs to the first floor, as he does every week. He walks to the end of the long corridor that bisects the building and knocks on Vasiliev's door. "Hello, Major," he says as he walks in. Maxime smiles at the man behind the desk, but gets no response. He sits down without being invited. The two of them are either side of the enormous rosewood desk that reminds Maxime of his father's desk in their family home just off Arbat Street in Moscow. Those days always seemed sunny back then. His father was successful and respected, and his mother was considered one of the great beauties of the age. He would watch them getting dressed to go out to eat at the Aragbi restaurant on Tverskaya Street, or go to the Bolshoi to watch their friend Alexander Godunov. When the dancer defected to the West, the KGB had called at the house the next day. It was the last time Maxime saw his father. When he had joined the KGB himself, just before the collapse of the Soviet Union, Maxime tried to find any files on what happened to his father, but they had all been lost or destroyed. "Daydreaming, Maxime," Vasiliev says too loudly. Maxime doesn't jump, though. His training lets him manage his emotions closely in times of danger and surprise. "Not at all, Major." "So?" The Major pauses, thinking about his phrasing. Maxime waits for his boss to speak. "Agent Valentina. Did you hear back from Moscow about the information she gave us?" "I did." The use of pauses in Vasiliev's sentences is starting to grate on Maxime's nerves. "And?" he says. "What do you think?" says the Major. "Do you think it was good intel?" "She assured me it was," says Maxime. "Sadly not." The Major looks directly at him, his little eyes locked in a stare. "I think the British call it dum-dum, is that right?" He pauses for the umpteenth time. "They didn't destroy our arms depot. We know who did. And it wasn't the British." Maxime's brain rolls around with what this means and what he needs to do, trying to preempt the Major. "She's taking you for a fool." "Maybe her cover was blown, Major. That's all I can think. Marjorie wouldn't—" "She has given us no choice, Maxime." The Major's face changes momentarily, and a wave of understanding washes across his features. But it disappears as quickly as it came. "No, Major," says Maxime. "Please." "She's a risk now," says Vasiliev. "Moscow wanted to end it weeks ago, but I said you had it under control. Now, this shows you haven't." "Give her one last chance, Major." The man sits across from Maxime, utterly still. Outside, the wind has picked up and is blowing the branches of the yew trees in the garden of the embassy. "The port of Navadari on the Black Sea," says Maxime. "What about it?" "I know it was a major blow to our arms distribution. If she can get us the names of the MI6 team who blew it up, would that be enough?" "Can she get it, though? She has failed to provide rigorous intelligence for 3 times in a row." "Give her one last chance, sir." Vasiliev considers the last words and plays with a fountain pen on the desk that was given to him for 30 years of service to Mother Russia. After a minute, he speaks. "One last chance.
You need to understand, though, that I won't be able to stop an assassin from Moscow if she fails this time. You know that, Maxim."
"I know that, Major. She won't let us down." An unforgiving wind blows along Shalagani Street as Nick Warren turns the corner and makes his way along the pavement until he reaches the door to the bar where he met the man 2 days ago. He is annoyed because of a message he had received from Sir Bernard earlier today, telling him that a senior German intelligence officer is arriving in Budapest soon. He told Nick to give them every assistance, because London has agreed with Berlin that the Germans will have more involvement with the NATO discussions being made in the region. The last thing he wants is bloody politicians sticking their noses in where they're not wanted. They just need to let the professionals get on with the job. It's like they don't trust him or something. He goes inside the bar, orders a beer, and sits in the same booth as last time. He checks his watch and can feel his heart beating fast underneath his shirt, which surprises him, as he's been in tighter spots than this in his life. It's 20 minutes before the man appears, and he sits down opposite Nick. "I hope you've got some good news." The man's voice is without tone, hardly modulating at all as he speaks. "Very good news," says Oxford. A waiter comes up to them, and the man orders whiskey. He offers another drink for Oxford, but he declines. "Show me," says the man, after the waiter has gone. "Not here." "Where then?" "I've got the files at my flat," says Oxford. The man pauses, exploring Nick's face for something but apparently not finding it. He looks away across the bar to a group of men engrossed in a loud conversation. "That wasn't the deal." "That's all you're getting," says Oxford. He is dead calm, his MI6 training giving him the ability to pace the conversation to meet his needs, and not those of his opponent. A silence descends between them. Nick takes a mouthful of beer, and the man considers his options. "I can also get another key piece of information that you need." "What's that?" "The names of the MI6 team who blew up the jetty at Navidari," says Nick. "But I want a deal. I give you that, and I never see you again. You or any of your colleagues." The man's drink arrives. He drinks from the glass but doesn't take his eyes off Oxford. "Or what?" he says. "Or I'll kill you." The man smiles with no joy in his features. "I'll need to see some of what you have first before I do anything. Like I said, it's only a short walk from here." The man drinks all of his whiskey in one gulp. "Let's go," he says, starting to stand up. They walk out into the cold air as dusk is crawling across Budapest. Nick leads them down steps to a side street, which is a shortcut to the main road. Oxford is slightly ahead of the man as they walk through a particularly dark patch of pavement. Suddenly, Oxford pushes his hand inside his jacket, and in less than a second swings his arm round and brings a knife up into the man's stomach. He turns the blade, and the man grunts in dull pain. Nick has already started to feel elated when a fist hits him on the side of the head. He involuntarily closes his eyes, and there is 1 second before a second thump hits him. Only now does he realize it's not the first man who's punching him, but a second one, a bald guy with glasses. Nick turns and lunges for the bald man, but he is met with a third punch to his face. He lashes out with a knife, and it touches the bald man's arm, but doesn't cut the fabric of his jacket. Nick slashes again, this time near the first man's face, and makes skin contact. The man puts a gloved hand up to his cheek, where blood is pumping out of a gouge. Nick kicks out now, trying to get the guy off balance, but the man is a trained fighter and easily dodges. It's the bald man's turn to lunge now, and he gets an arm around Nick's neck, pulls him down to the roadway, and simultaneously grabs for Nick's knife hand, trying to pull the weapon away. He is stronger than Nick and manages to bring the blade near to his chest. It hovers an inch away from his clothing, Nick pushing back with all of his force. The man's training allows him to slightly release his power as a trap. As Nick relaxes his force too, the guy stabs violently. The knife disappears into Nick's jacket, and a tide of pain from a wound rams through his entire body. His fingers are still wrapped around the handle of the knife, and Nick manages to pull the blade away, then stabs wildly at the other man. He somehow lands a blow, and the knife penetrates again. It stops the guy's attack momentarily, enough for Nick to land 2 blows to his head. The man falls. Nick has been trained to stay and finish the job, but inside his brain, he just needs to get away. He turns and runs as fast as he can, leaving one man dead in the road. But the other man is very much alive. Victor sees Dusanna walking towards the 9 bar before she sees him. Despite the cold, her long coat is open, and it flaps gently in the evening air as she walks. She disappears into the bar less than a minute before he gets there. As Victor walks in, she is talking to the barman. She turns to see who has come in, and when she sees it's him, smiles a smile that makes him feel alive. They order drinks and find a table in the farthest corner of the place, up near the back. After they've been talking about teenage memories, and how they never realized at the time how good it was to have no responsibility, she suddenly says, "I chucked my job in, Victor." "You said you would." "I'm leaving."
"When?"
3 or 4 days. She raises her blue eyes to his. "I just need to pay off my landlord and get a car."
"I want to come with you,"
he says without a moment's hesitation. Dusanna smiles. "Where should we go?"
"North or south?"
he says.
"South. The sea. Long cocktails and sunbathing."
They laugh like children on Christmas Eve, expectant of dreams coming true.
"I can get a car,"
he says.
"How?"
"This guy I work for, I'm his driver. He lent me his car so I can chauffeur him about."
"So you just steal it?"
"Yeah,"
he says quietly. His eyes are alight with the idea.
"Wouldn't he come after you?"
she says.
"Didn't you say he was some sort of gangster?"
"I can handle him. I used to box when I was younger."
"I'll buy a car,"
she says.
"I've got some cash."
"Let's see then."
"No,"
she says.
"I don't want to be with a violent guy. I've done that already and it wasn't great."
"Why?"
"What do you mean, why? What sort of question is that?"
"I'll look after you."
"You can do that without beating people up, Victor."
"All right."
"All right."
He puts his hands up in mock surrender.
"I was joking. Forget it."
He drinks his beer and she looks at his face to try and find out if he'd been telling the truth. On the other side of Budapest, in another bar, Lilia finishes refilling the fridge with bottles of beer. Her boss Maria says she can go home early as it's quiet tonight. Lilia collects her things from the office and goes out of the back door. As she pushes through the alley to the street, she can see someone up ahead, lying on the ground. She stops, not sure of whether to go back or risk it. The guy's not moving, so she walks on, but slowly. As she reaches the figure, she recognizes him. He's been in the bar a few times, and they've spoken once or twice. He's that Englishman, and she likes him. Lilia goes down on her haunches and leans in to see his face. His eyes are closed, and his face is cut and bruised.
Hey,
she whispers. Nick opens his eyes.
You okay? Too much drink?
She smiles at him. He grunts, then frowns at a stabbing pain in his body. He lets out a short sigh and another pained grunt.
You're not okay, are you? What is it? What happened?
He is holding one hand on his side. She lifts up his jacket and sees the blood on the clothes underneath.
My God.
I need taxi. His voice is faint.
You need a hospital.
No, call a cab.
What happened?
She repeats, but he doesn't answer. After a few moments, she opens a taxi app on her phone.
Where do you want to go?
He tells her the address of his flat, and she types it in.
2 minutes,
she says. He nods but says nothing. His features stay screwed up tight. Lilia bends down and takes his arm. Between them, they manage to get his damaged body up and out to the roadside. The cab driver is reluctant to take Nick in the car, given his state, but Lilia says there's an extra 5,000 forints in it for him, and he reluctantly agrees to take them both. She struggles across from where the taxi drops them and takes Nick to his apartment. He winces with pain several times as they hobble slowly along. Lilia lays him down on the bed when they get inside, then goes in search of any sort of first aid box, and there's one in the kitchen. She returns and tries to lift his jumper, but he grunts in pain again.
This is serious,
she says. I know.
I don't know if I can do anything.
She inspects the wound, which makes her eyes water, as she has never seen anything like this before. She cleans the area around the cut and puts gauze and plasters over it. There are painkiller tablets in the kit, and she gives them to Nick. He lies with his eyes closed on the bed. Blood from his injury has seeped out onto the bed cover in a red stain, but he seems more comfortable now.
You should go to hospital,
she says. She watches his face and rests her hand on his, hoping that he doesn't die.